Back here on the Meat Speak podcast, powered by the certified Angus beef brand. Bryan in studio. It's been a while. Joining me alongside Chef Tony Biggs. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing really good. You guys doing good?
Excellent.
Excellent. And in between us, of course, the meat scientist, Diana Clark. How's everything?
Doing fantastic.
Excellent. Before we tear into what we want to talk to today, Chef, you've been sailing the high seas.
I've been sailing. Okay, I won't sing that. That Rod Stewart? Yeah, that was Rod Stewart.
I just want to know, are you more Captain Stubing or Gopher on the cruise ships?
Not the captain, but I did like the uniform. I really liked those. But everybody wore it, so you couldn't tell who the captain was and who wasn't.
So it's
Captain, come on! Oh, everybody turn around.
That's how they used to protect royalty, right? They dress up everybody like the king.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You never know who, right?
You never know who.
Who knew this was on cruise ships? But good trip, Norwegian Cruise Line.
It was amazing. I mean, we partnered with a great brand in Norwegian Cruise Lines. I was on there for about 4 days. It was my first cruise. We did a really cool wine dinner with Chateau Lafite Rothschild. Oh, my gosh. Everybody went crazy. And, of course, we presented 4 or 5 of our specialty recipes from the Certified Angus beef brand. So, packed house. We did a spice rub for a demonstration and a tenderloin poke in the atrium of the cruise ship, which was about 150 people, and I think we're going to be I think we were asked to do a couple. So this isn't the last. Yeah, so we're kind of excited about doing the cruise, but I'm glad to be back on board, on land.
Yeah.
And so here we are.
Excellent. I wish beef poke needs to be more of a thing, I think.
It does. I mean, because it really kind of, when you're cutting like a tenderloin, it kind of looks like the tuna, And then, and then when you add all the soy and all the flavorings, all that, it kind of resembles. And
it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty special.
Yeah. We need to make this happen. Sam Choi, our pal in Hawaii, if you're listening, can you make this happen, brother? Right? We need more beef poke in the world. That said, Chef Tony, one of the things that I love about you and the things that fascinate you in your career is you kind of run the gamut, right? You were cruising with Norwegian Cruise Lines through the Caribbean. By the way, you have no tan lines, I see. You're going to have to explain that later.
I didn't. I was working, Bryan. Some of us have to work here, right?
Fine. But that said, you can also turn on a dime and do a lot of old-timey open fire cooking methods that have been around since like the caveman era, right? And that's what we want to talk about today. Going back in time to honestly an age before there were ovens, before there was all of this technology, the way people used to cook in these things that have been termed earth ovens, right? We're talking about underground cooking, right? And so, Chef, you've had a little bit of experience with using Mother Earth as a cooking vessel, correct?
Yes, and believe it or not, it all started with my upbringing in New England because, I'm from the Massachusetts area on the coast, and what are they most famous for? They're most famous for a lobster bake.
Lobster.
Right.
Wait a minute. Is this like a clam bake? Because
it's a clam bake.
We had clam bakes in college that were nothing like this.
No, I mean, and it really starts with a shovel. You have a shovel, your favorite shovel, and you need a place where you can dig a big hole. Preferably on your land. You don't want to be digging, Fido's hole, right? Yeah. And then you need several things that are going to inspire the fire, and you're very creative and your unbelievable clam bake. And so it kind of starts with the shovel digging a big pit. And we'll get to the beef part in a minute because they do some different things. But you dig a big pit. We like the Mexicans do, and actually the barbacoa kind of started in the Caribbean.
Okay.
If you think about it, as digging a big pit, lining the pit with the same size rocks that you're gonna cook with, okay, and then building a fire. That is not with a lot of flames.
Okay.
So you want those gray embers
Okay.
Building before you add any kind of meat or anything on the coals, right? What we used to do then is take and the Mexicans do this, and the Caribbean do them. They take the agave leaves, which you make tequila with, right? And I've seen it several different ways. You can wrap all your meat in the leaves, like banana leaves or the agave leaves, which
Okay.
is a tequila.
Agave, of course, means love.
Love, right? Exactly. And of course, barbacoa means barbecue. Really? Okay. So if you think
For the
about
love
it,
of
barbecue, right? And then you're going to make sure that you're going to take and use these maybe more tougher cuts of meat.
Yeah.
We've done chuck roll many times. You could do brisket. You could do ribs. You're not going to put a porterhouse or a tenderloin in there because,
just
let's
crazy
face
talk.
it, they'll be done in 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
These take, these take several hours, maybe 10 to 12 hours of really slow cooking, right?
Okay.
The marinade is very, very important. And there's tons of marinades you can use for this, like orange juice and different chilies from South America and Cuba and Mexico. And then oregano is really, popular in barbacoa. You want that thing to cook. You want that chuck roll that we've done before just to cook very, very low and slow, maybe 9 to 10 hours, right? So let's get back to the fire. So we've built this, so far we've dug our pit. We have the same size rocks, and now we've wrapped our marinated meats together. You can do this in foil too, okay?
Okay.
And you can also do this in a crock pot. Well, all right, with all the seasoning. But
Yeah.
it's not the authentic style because we're talking about pit barbecue,
Well,
right?
Tony, you mentioned that topic, what you wrap it with, and I'm an amateur in just about everything, right? But you can use aluminum foil, which I've seen mentioned, but you also lose something as well. Can you talk about the things that you wrap with? You'd mentioned the
Banana leaves.
yeah, banana like
And the
there-
agave
there-
leaves.
Yeah,
there
do
are
those like break down like while you're cooking? Does that add flavor or anything?
It adds flavor, and it's the authenticity
Of it.
of the barbacoa, which has really become an art form in the Caribbean nation and in Latin America. And the agave leaves are free in those areas.
That's
You're
true,
not
yeah.
paying for it,
Yeah.
and that's the best way. And you're getting those juices from the agave leaves. Maybe it's the tequila
That
that's
might be part of it.
kind of
yeah.
melting down in the meat, and that's why everybody kind of walking around funny after
Yeah.
they're eating the barbacoa, right?
Right.
Well, and there is it's almost like a regional terroir, right? Depending on where you do it. Up here in Ohio, I've read that depending on where you dig this pit, you'll get notes of mint, which obviously mint grows very, very prevalently here in Ohio. You get I don't know if it's a flavor, but dandelion, like the thing, which dandelion and burdock, of course, is it's a drink. But it is funny where you choose to do this regionally. If you choose to not just go the aluminum foil route, which seems like the safe route at least, the more cleanliness route, but
I mean, you can wash the leaves. It's fine.
Yeah.
The cooking process that's your kill step.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, what I would caution with everybody, you want to make sure this fire is always burning, like the
Yeah,
embers.
that's what I was gonna ask. So how do you keep it going?
Yeah. So you want some wood that you've been soaked overnight.
Okay.
Some smaller pieces, along with the larger pieces that kind of have been soaking overnight as well. You want to stay away from that contamination zone.
Yeah.
And keep it over 140 degrees, and you don't know. So you don't know when everything is covered. Let's say you put a damp cloth over now the meat, and then you put I've seen it with just a piece of tin. You could go to Kohl's and have a piece of tin cut up, and then you bury the whole thing in the rest of the sand. Okay.
Okay.
Now you've got this smoldering. Hot embers on the rocks. It's coming through to the meat, which is in foil or the agave leaves or the banana leaves, and you just let it cook. Now you're not supposed to peek.
Yes.
But gosh, I'm a peeker. You know what I mean? I'm a peeker. I don't know. I gotta see it, and if I don't see it smoking and still, creating that fire underneath that cooking method, I get a little nervous.
Yeah,
I mean,
because how do
especially
you know?
especially if you're gonna cook for a bunch of people.
Yeah.
You don't want to look, like.
Meat's undercooked. Like, what do you do?
Right, or the potatoes, like in a low country boil, or the corn, or the lobster, or a chuck roll, right?
Yeah.
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 So it's an art.
Yeah.
It's an art
Well,
form.
that's always my question in the back of my mind as I'm going through this. Let's say you do too good of a job burying it, and you cut off all oxygen,
Right.
I mean, I would imagine there has to be some oxygen down there to keep that smolder going. And having done it, is there a feel for that? I mean, that you just get over time?
I've learned to, before I put the sand on and bury it completely, I put a hole in the little metal tin there. Like you can put your finger in there and kind of lift it up. That is like an air pocket too. So you're having the air come through there.
Got it.
And you can see little puffs of smoke coming up. So you know you're good, right?
Okay.
And then cover it back up, and then it's still going here. I'm not gonna. I peaked the way I need to without having to remove the foil, the tin. The dirt again.
Yeah.
A lot of people I've seen people put dirt, over, and then, your food's getting all messy.
Yeah,
so I like to cover it with a nice cloth, and then like a metal tin over it or something like that, and then bury it with the rest of the sand.
Okay.
But keep a little hole there on the corner of the metal where you can kind of dig it up and kind of peek in there, lift it up and lift it down without having to remove everything, the agave leaves and all that. Now, if it goes out, you kind of, you maneuver some smaller pieces in there that are already embers and try to keep it going like that.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah,
That's great.
it's an art.
Yeah.
It's very an art. Yeah.
Diana, if you could talk about the fact that I would imagine that you're starting with meat, which obviously has moisture in it. You add those those leaves, those organic compounds that are also made up of mostly water. At the end of the day, this is a steam, right? That's the cooking process going on here.
Really, it's going to be, cooking in its own juice. That's why Tony said, put it in a crock pot, because you're braising it. Essentially, that's what you're ending up doing. You're containing that moisture in it, so it's going to be cooking in its own juices.
Well, honestly, it's almost braising. It's almost like a confit as well, isn't it? With all that fat that's inside of the.
Be cooking with it, depending on what cut you're using, for sure. Yeah.
Well, what happens to a piece of meat during the steam? Because when I think of meats that are steamed to finish, pastrami is obviously the one that jumps out at me. What is going on there? How does that work when you're interacting with a moisture, a warm, moist air?
It's that the heat is still breaking it down in the same aspect that you would any other cooking process. Just the way that steam is transferring throughout, and it's going to be more of an even cooking, I should say, just based on how you wouldn't have that. You'd have a little bit of a direct heat source from the hot coals itself, but you're steaming it, so it's even going to be the meat cooking from the inside out kind of steam process.
It's kind of cooking itself.
Yeah. It's actually I'm very intrigued to do this. We always camping we'd always have a mountain man breakfast is what we'd call it, and you would utilize the campfire from the night before, and you'd make this meal in the middle of the night after you'd kind of done your thing, put it in there, put the coals all around it. In the morning, you'd wake up, you'd have a nice cast iron pot, you open it up, and it's ready to go. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of right now. I've never tried this before with meat, and I really want to do it.
I think we should do it in the backyard here.
Yeah.
Certified Angus beef. We've been talking about this.
All right, I would be. That'd be fun. We've got that little grass patch.
I'm going to talk to management and
Kinda
make sure
random.
that we don't dig up the rose bushes or something like that. Right?
The landscape is pretty beautiful around here.
Well, maybe we should rethink this and go dig over on the. But there's a hotel next door. Just, hey guys, don't mind us.
We're behind the warehouse.
Hampton Inn, we apologize. We'll fill this hole back in when we're done. Let's. So there's actually a video. It's funny you talk about that. I just caught it today, and I died a little inside. It's called Cooking Ribeyes in Jars. Have you seen this?
No,
so
I don't think I want to.
So it's a guy who actually takes ribeye steaks, folds them up, puts them in a ball jar, throws in some aromatics, some thyme, some garlic. I think he's got some cherry tomatoes in there, things like that, and then puts them in seals them up, puts them in a pan, and then brings the pan up with water and puts it over heat. So to me that's kind of the same idea, right? You're still cooking with that ambient internal heat that you're getting out of this, right? Now I died a little inside because he's using ribeye
Right?
for this long. Like,
Come
dude,
on. Come
dude,
on.
ribeye deserves a better fate than
Right.
that. But it struck me as this is an interesting way to think about allowing food to cook itself.
Yes.
Um,
See, that's what I wonder. Do you feel like it's missing that Maillard, that browning at all in the process, or?
I do, and I think you're also missing, like, going back to the barbacoa. I think you're actually smoking as well.
Because you're getting, okay, I could see that.
Can
Yeah,
you see that? Because
Yeah.
of the nice woods, and then you've got the agave leaves or the banana leaves, and that is permeating, that smoke is permeating into the meat and the leaves. So you're getting a little bit of smoke in there too. Now, in the glass jar, are you getting that smoke? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I feel like no.
I don't feel like it
Yeah.
is, right?
Yeah.
And it's just something in a glass jar. Do you want to drink it? I mean, drink
Right?
right. I'm sure it's, I think, and now social media, people will try anything right now.
Just
and
for a
I've seen
video.
it. We've seen it all,
Yeah.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
We've seen it all, right?
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
That's right. It's disheartening. It's disheartening. So this process, because again, I have the power of Google, right? This has been going on for 30,000 years. Started in mainland Europe at the end of the Ice Age, right? Actually, when you start to look at the history, it's when people started to intentionally grow crops for food in regions as opposed to just harvesting whatever was wild and going out there. Was about the time that this came, and this was the original barbacoa, right? So in its originality, barbacoa it means barbecue, but traditionally that barbecue meant underground cooking.
Right.
Done in all cultures, right? Chef, you've been around the world. Obviously, this is something, when you think about like those hog roasts on the beach in Hawaii. You look
Yes.
down, you look down in the South Pacific in places like Guam and the Philippines. This is everywhere, right?
We used to do this in Jordan. So, lamb in the sand. Have you ever heard of it? Lamb in the sand.
We have some goats.
Goat, lamb and goat.
And a
So,
moat.
we did a let's say barbacoa style lamb in the sand for Her Majesty's birthday party. And so what we did to make it really simple was we dug a big pit.
Okay.
We had kind of like this a steel not a steel drum, but we could lower the steel into the pit where we could then build our fire.
Okay.
Okay. We had rocks in there too, but this was kind of a steel like I want to say like it looks like a 50-gallon drum.
Okay.
But it's got layers to it, so you could put your wood on one layer, and then you could actually put a grill. The grill looks like your grill at home from Weber Grill, right? The top of it. So that would go on the next, and then your meats or whatever, your lamb. And then, et cetera, if you want to put something on top of that with another grill, and then you cover the whole thing up. Now, that's a cleaner way, I felt, to do the whole barbacoa style.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt, it was amazing. And then you cover it with sand again, lamb in the sand, and it just cooks really nicely, and it's clean, and those embers are continuing to cook through the whole process.
Okay, that sounds pretty good, actually.
Yeah, that's fascinating. If you go down to there are restaurants in Mexico that actually have pits built into the back of the restaurant. Like that's what they do. This is how they cook. They don't have to dig the holes. They have multiple pits already dug. And they're putting everything in there from like organ meat to vegetables,
beef cheeks,
to
everything.
It's
right, amazing, right?
Yeah, it's such an incredible process. And it really is a trust factor here. You're not cooking to temperature, right? You're cooking to, you're braising it, right?
Yes.
You want it to shred.
And if it's gonna shred, it's gonna hit temp. You're gonna know you're in the safe zone.
We were at the CIA, a couple Worlds of Flavor, a couple years ago before the COVID, and there was a little girl. I guess she was about 4'7". I'm not sure. I'm not good with this. And she was teaching a class about pit cooking.
No way.
And we're all out there going, what? And she cooked a whole meal in the pit.
Oh, that's cool.
And I can't remember her name. It was so cool. And she hit a home run. She knocked it out of the park. her explanation, her her education on it.
That's really
and
cool.
she cooked potatoes and cabbage and corn, and of course chuck roll. And so
Yes.
it was marinated in orange juice and oregano and some chilies, and it was really magical. And that was one of the lunches. It was
Dang,
fantastic.
That's
that
cool.
sounds good.
All right, let's talk about the process of Chef. You already explained it a little bit, but this doesn't. To me, this is one of the more intimidating methods of cooking because, again, you're
There's a
you're
lot.
digging, right? But we're not talking about a huge hole here. I mean, obviously, if you're going to cook something huge, but it doesn't have to be we're not hiding Jimmy Hoffa here, right? I mean, if
No, I'm glad you mentioned him, but I thought that was in Savannah. But anyway, I heard multiple things. Giant Stadium.
Oh my god.
yeah, but you dig your hole in it, and again, it just has to be a couple feet by a couple feet, right?
Right. And, you don't have to put a whole chuck roll. You can break it down into
Yeah.
pieces. So that will minimize the cooking time.
Yep.
And, I think it'll give you a better product, too, as well. That'll shred really nicely if
Yeah.
you're going to make a barbacoa taco or something like that.
Yeah.
But, yes, it doesn't have to be big. It could be a 4 by 4 foot. Just make sure you have the rocks and all that, and make sure your fire is embers. It's not flames. That is critical. You're not building a bonfire.
I feel like
That
that's
is-
like the hardest step, and
Yeah.
like just trying to get that right coal. Yeah.
Trusting the smolder. I actually saw
Yes.
somebody they chose the size of the hole they were going to dig because they went to Home Depot and bought a patio paver. And they were like, "All right, this is how big." And that was they dug their hole, slide the paver in. There's your base.
There's
Instead
your
of
base,
needing
right.
like flat rocks to balance, like
Yeah.
there you go, just dig it to
balance
fit
out.
what you've got.
Exactly.
So yeah,
Yep. And then you can put a grate over that.
yeah.
Typical grate, just a grate. Put your meat on top of that. You could go to I've seen them in our downtown Cleveland Mexican store. They have agave leaves and banana
Oh,
leaves.
really? I
Yeah,
was
you
gonna
can
ask
buy
where-
them
okay.
if you want to do it that route and do it really authentic. Have
I
some
think that'd be cool.
friends over, or again, as Brian said, you could do it in foil.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's try it.
Let's do it.
And so there's a part of my brain that says this was in its earliest stages. This was actually like an animal trap that they just dug a hole and hoped that like a deer would wander into it and whoops
And
and it falls
then
down and then you cook it in the
ready
ground.
to cook right away.
I'm not a historian, but I'm willing to bet.
And
That's
it
how it
evolved.
kind of-
It evolved. Yeah.
Well, since it's down there, I don't feel like lifting it up. Just throw something hot on it.
Right. When life gives you lemons, it is, you guys have already touched on a little bit, but in terms of what you cook, truly like cook something that can withstand a low and slow. I watched, it was like an outdoor survivalist, and this lady was cooking sausages underground, right? And she literally pulled the sausage out. She didn't have a meat thermometer or anything because it's survivalist. And she just takes a big bite of the sausage, clearly undercooked. It was like, needs a few more minutes, and threw it back in. Like, maybe not the best application for underground cooking.
The texture on that had to be awful.
Well, like I said, it would be blasphemy to put a tenderloin
Right.
or a ribeye or
I
a strip
agree.
steak. You want to put like these tougher cuts of meat,
Ones
right?
that you want to shred.
Right,
Yes.
shred like I could see a brisket going
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Takes a long time to cook. You're getting the smoke anyway. The chuck roll
Chuck roll's
is
fantastic.
ideal, and that's what we use when we do this. And of course, back ribs, right?
Oh,
back
yeah.
ribs would be amazing.
Yeah,
right?
for
and it's
sure.
low and slow to tenderize, and those are big cuts of meat, right?
Yeah.
I guess if you wanted to put a steamship round in there, Brian, we could do it. It would take a while, I think, but it probably would.
Oh my
be,
gosh, you could
but
do
probably
that,
be
but
interesting.
you could have the
Leave the shank hanging out.
the tip of it
right.
sticking out of the ground.
Now
With the-
that
With the
yes!
flag stuck in like the marigold.
gosh.
Oh.
shank in the ground.
You could put one of those little the little turkey thing that pops when the turkey's done.
I love it.
Just on the end of the,
Oh, I
of the
love it.
beef shank.
Oh, what a great idea. That would be good. You could look down the shank, and see if it's,
Oh, that'd be awesome.
that's cool.
Well,
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and here's the thing. It's spring everywhere. So even up here in the Great
ground's
White North,
soft.
we can dig, right? It's wet, right? Which also, I guess that's another thing. If your hole that you dig is wet, you probably need to dry it out, right? Or that you make
Yeah,
sure
that's a
that
good
the fire
question.
that you're building in there burns long enough that you dry that thing out.
Well, that's why, it's really important to build your base. It's either rocks or, like you said, pavers. along the side of it, so you have a dry
Okay.
area. You want that dry area, and a lot of folks use the rocks, the different size rocks,
Yeah.
or evenly sized, and that's how they build their pit. I mean, I think just throwing the wood down there, I think is not going to really, if it is
Fire will
wet,
go out.
yeah,
Yeah.
the fire would definitely go out.
Yeah.
Chef, one last question. I'm gonna expose my amateur nature when I say this, but what about dirt on the meat? Is that not a concern?
Well, again, you don't really put the dirt on the meat. You're covering the whole process, but in between that, you might have a layer. It could be like a sheet, okay, over your last layer, or you have a metal piece of metal that goes over that, and then a sheet that goes over that, and then you definitely put your sand on there to just cover the whole thing so it cooks. You don't put the sand directly on the meat, or you put a couple of layers between the meat and covering.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't put the sand on there. I mean,
If you think it's tough picking sand out when you go to the beach,
yeah,
Oh,
right.
gosh.
I mean, can you imagine your
It's
first?
a little gritty. Tastes like kitty litter.
Can you imagine your first clam bake, right? I mean, and you've got sand right there. Yeah, I would stay out. Stay away from that.
Excellent.
Think of Little Rascals. This is what I really call a sandwich.
That said, if this is your first time tuning into the Meat Speak podcast, we invite you to go back and download, subscribe to all of the episodes. I don't know how many we're at here, but we're approaching the tail end of season 3, and what you'll find is a nice mishmash of different personalities. Actually, if you go back a week prior, we talked to our buddy Zach Wolf from Louisville, Kentucky, with the Olay Restaurant Group. Before that, we had Jeremy Omansky and Jess Pryles, but we also tear heavily into meat science and the cooking process. So if these are things that are scratching your proverbial itch and you dig it, please go on to Apple, Google Play, Spotify. Leave us a star ranking. Leave us a review. It ensures that we're going to stick around longer, right? Because we like to justify our existence with numbers, which is very difficult.
We do,
Right.
right? Yes.
Yeah, so please head on over there, slide into our DMs if there is something that you want us to cover. That said, we are, as I said, in the tail end of season 3, and all 3 of us, I believe, our schedules are starting to pick up, which is probably a
Yes.
good time to start to think about what's going to come in season 4 when it launches at the end of September. Chef, how long did it take you to get your sea legs back from the boat?
Oh, let's see. Wow. Not long. It was really nice. It was tranquil. I left the door open so I could hear the ocean waves.
Cool.
I could feel the breeze. I could witness the sunrise. It was nice.
nice.
It was relaxing too. So.
Excellent. On that note, for everybody listening to the Meat Speak podcast, powered by the certified Angus beef brand, for Chef Tony Biggs, meat scientist Diana Clark, I'm Bryan Schaaf. Thanks for listening.